For there is power in your freedom. There is hope within your dreams. There is movement when you live them. Your vision's what we need. Your vision for the earth now, and the tender care she needs. Your vision for the people. It's time to plant your seed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Events That Change Lives supplemental training on creating workshop content. And this is where you are going to learn how to design the outline and create the content for your workshops. And what we really call this is a signature talk, right? We recommend that you design what we call a signature talk. And this is a talk that you give that's designed to both educate your participants and leave them wanting to more, right? You're educating them and you're facilitating them. You're engaging them in experiential exercises and you're leaving them wanting more. You want to serve both your audience, take care of them, give some great content, and be sure that you take some time to talk about your program and your mentorship services during your talk, during your workshop. And this is what we call planting seeds, right? It's called seeding, where you plant seeds by letting your participants know that you are a professional. You are not in this just because this is a hobby business, but you have services that people will pay for, right? Because they likely are attending a free workshop with you. They're coming to hear you talk at a free workshop. And through that free workshop, you're letting them know that you have services that they can invest in to take them to the next level and get them through the challenges in their life and help them get what they want in their life, right? So you may weave in some client stories. That may be a way of planting a seed during your talk by telling them about some of your clients and the changes that your clients have made so that they could see themselves in that possibility. You might also talk about the importance of getting long-term support as part of your talk. And that way, when you go to make your offer at the end of your workshop or at the end of your talk and you make an offer for complimentary consultations, your participants will be ready for it and there won't be any surprises, okay? So I hope you're taking notes. Grab a pen and grab your handout called Creating Content, and that's all about really designing your signature talk. So let's talk big picture just for a moment about what it really means to be a speaker, right? This is just a reminder that being a speaker, being out there, public speaking in front of people really is one of the top paid professions in the world, right? When you look out in the world and you see the leaders who are all out there making great money, they're all speaking publicly, right? So what you're learning here, it's really a core skill that you can use for the rest of your life to help you create a financially sustainable business. And when you go to deliver a talk, it's especially easy for women who want to overgive to fill your participants full of way too much stuff. So you're going to be hearing me talk during this training about really choosing 2 or 3 primary things that you want your participants to take away from your workshop and really go deep with those things. Okay, so we're going to teach you how to do that and how to choose those things during this training. And what you're about to hear me provide you is actually a training that I do for my year-long clients. And it's a training that I do called Designing Your Signature Talk. This is really across the board the most popular training that I give my clients. I always get great feedback from giving my clients this training. They're always so ready for it and grateful for it. And it's the training that they tend to refer back to the most throughout their programs. So you're going to hear me lead this training with one of our guest faculty, Women on Purpose core faculty members, Serena Andrea. And Serena is really the other voice that you'll hear on the line here teaching with me. You're going to be hearing a lot from Serena in the Events That Change Lives curriculum. She's an incredible teacher, and Serena and I love to teach together. It's something that I really like to model as a woman entrepreneur, and in that realm of feminine entrepreneurship, I really like to model collaboration and co-teaching because it's just so much more fun to do it with somebody else. I encourage you guys to go out there and find other people that you can co-teach with. And the reason I pulled Serena and Andrea into this as core faculty is that Serena is a storyteller. She's been gathering stories and studying the power of stories for 2 decades. And Serena speaks at events and festivals all over the country. She tells stories, and more importantly, she has supported hundreds of both our clients and her own clients to pull their ideal story out of their life experience and then tell that story on stage as a way to attract all their ideal clients, okay? So she helps her clients put their workshops together and their speaking engagements together and insert their story into that curriculum in a way that really has their participants feeling understood and feeling like you've been through something, right, as the facilitator of that workshop, that you've been through something that they can relate to, and you've gotten to the other side of it in a way that has them trust you and really positions them to end up wanting more from you, right? Because content tells, but stories tell. So in a moment, I'm going to cut into that training, and I actually left it raw and relatively unedited because I wanted you to actually hear me teach it exactly like I would teach my year-long clients. You can get a taste of how we hold space for our year-long program. And we do, of course, take several months teaching into workshop content in our year-long program, but this is, again, the core of the content for you to be able to get started outlining your workshops and your live events and really designing an itinerary that sets you up for making a great offer. So if you hear us in this training referencing a program called ELA, what we're talking about is our Entrepreneurial Leadership Academy. It's a year-long mastermind where women are really up underneath each other and behind each other for a full year. And just notice as you hear me dive in with my clients, you know, what kind of rapport we create and how it is that we lay out these concepts that even though they can be complex, when we get to the heart of the matter, we really boil it down for you guys so that it's simple, it's easy to digest, and you can go ahead and take this and implement this in your own workshops, in your own classrooms. So really you're going to learn a ton because these women are on the same journey that you are. We're all in this together. All right, so let's dive in. The first thing that I want to say about kind of framing your upcoming speaking career, for those of you that, you look ahead of you and you know you want to get out there and you know speaking is going to be one of the fastest ways to grow your business, which it is in many ways the fastest way to grow your business. I want to encourage you to really open up your mind to doing all of the free speaking possible. A lot of people think, oh, well, I want to be a speaker and I want to get paid hundreds or thousands of dollars to speak. I've heard about these speakers that get $10,000, to go speak on the stage. And I'm here to tell you, and Serena's here to tell you that speaking engagements that are paid are fewer and fewer and fewer. And when you are willing to get out there and speak free, that's what we call it, speaking free. That means that you don't charge to go get on somebody's stage, that you go speak free. Speaking free is the fastest way to grow your business because it's going to put you in front of a lot of people in a short amount of time. And what's great is that now, this is very feminine, right? Because now you're coming from a place of generosity. And the people in the audience that want what you have, they can self-select. And they'll sign up for a discovery session, or when you get ready to make paid offers, they'll sign up for your program, and they'll self-select based on the content that you gave them. They'll enjoy the content, and you'll leave them wanting more. And there's always going to be people in your speaking engagement that aren't meant to be your divine right clients, and that's okay. But when you're willing to get in front of a group of people and share what you know, and here's the thing, you do not have to be a perfect speaker. In fact, in some ways, I think, and Serena, I think you would agree, it's better if you're not a perfect, professional, groomed speaker. people can relate to you a lot more when you're human. But when you're willing to get up in front of people and share what you know, now you're coming from a place of generosity, right? This is a very feminine way to build your business. Women love to give. We love to offer people, tools and tricks and service, the things that we know can help them. And then we let them know there's more where that came from. And in fact, if what I taught you tonight really resonated with you, and if you know that you need further support in these areas, then here's the obvious next step would be to sit down and talk to me one-on-one and consider working with me over the next few 3 to 6 months so that we can really implement and integrate some of these changes into your lifestyle so you can look back 6 months from now and have an entirely new life. Right? That's the power of speaking. And so very first and most important, probably the second most important tip you're going to learn on this call is to be willing to speak for free. Do not be one of those snooty, entitled entrepreneurial goddesses who wants to go out and get paid thousands of dollars to speak. Anytime you have a chance to get in front of an audience and make an offer, even if it's just an offer for a free discovery session, you have now set yourself up to create the potential of enrolling several clients in your practice. We've had women enroll anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 to up to 16 clients right after a speaking engagement. And that's what's possible for you. In fact, it was the 4th time I ever spoke in Santa Cruz that I had my first $10,000 speaking engagement, which meant I think I had 4 clients sign up with me with $2,500 packages. So if we can do it, you can do it. At the time, I was just making it up. I was a retired school teacher from Iowa. I didn't even have a coach, and I definitely didn't have this template. So you've got more than I had when I got started, and you all are absolutely capable of doing this. And Serena, can you just add a little bit about that whole piece of you don't have to do it perfectly?
Yeah, absolutely. Your ELA group is so fortunate to be able to witness you speak to them and how you do it, because one of the things that you bring to it is this really personable, authentic expression, and the magic really happens between the speaker and the audience. So as you ladies all know, when you're on these calls with Sage and when you're on the retreats, you'll watch Sage talk straight to you and interact. It's not like she had this all premeditated and completely formatted before she came, and that's what we love about Sage. We love that we can feel her. And so when you ladies are working on your templates and working on your signature talks, I recommend you don't try and have every sentence hammered out. A good outline, structure, a template to follow is key. But when you're sitting in your office or with your laptop and you're working on your signature talk, it's not alive. It's just basically the bones of it. When you get in front of people and you're with the flesh of other people and you're with their eye contact, that's when things start to come alive. And so when you are working on your templates and your outlines, it's a place when fear can settle in. It can be one of those times where you start to imagine giving that talk. You start to imagine standing in front of people, and the fear can grip you. So I want to give you something that you can do when that happens that helps me a lot. When I start to go into imagining delivering my talk and imagine being in front of a group of people, I do what the basketball players do and the football players do and all the professional sports teams when they're going to play a really big game. And I imagine it going really well. I transport myself into the room where I'm speaking, and I imagine the room filling up with friendly faces, with people that I can support, with people that are curious, people that are energized, and I imagine myself the same. I don't allow my imagination to go down the road of I'm too tired, I'm too overwhelmed, I'm too old, I'm too short, I don't go that imaginary trail. I go the other one. And I just imagine I'm slam dunking it. I'm hitting it out of the park. I'm doing it well. And that's the movie I play over and over in my mind on the days preceding my performances and my talks. And when I'm working on it, I imagine it just going really well. And it entrains your body, it entrains your actual physical body and your imagination to expect it going well, to expect those people coming. And that helps with the sort of inertia that fear can bring when we imagine taking a risk. We imagine being vulnerable, and we imagine talking to people we haven't met yet. So I highly recommend you taking on that practice. And if any of you want to investigate, there's lots of stuff online from Michael Jordan and other professionals who use this pre-game strategy in their imaginations.
I love that. And it's actually a great thing to do, to hop on with one of your buddies and just talk through it and have your buddy reflect to you how great it's going to go. And I'll say one more thing about that, and I love that, Serena. If you guys have ever seen Serena on stage, you know, she really comes alive, and she's a performer, but she's also right there with the audience. And so those of you that are performers, Serena and I are also going to be inviting you to kind of dial it down a couple of notches, because you don't want to get overly into performance energy. You want to kind of bring yourself grounded in a way that really holds the room. You have your moments of being funny and cracking jokes and telling stories, but then you bring it right back to your audience. You tie it back. And we'll teach you more about that at the Sexy Six-Figure Speaking Retreat. But you hear me do this all the time, and you hear Serena do it when we tell our little stories, and then we say, and you can have this too, and I want you to think about a time when you wanted to experience the da-da-da-da-da, right? Now we're tying it back to you. And when you're speaking, and this is what I've seen is really one of the biggest mistakes that beginners make, is that we start to make it all about us. And when we're speaking, it's all about your audience. That's who it's about. It's about them. And when you show up in service and you tell your story in service of who's in the room, and you come from that place of, I'm sharing this with you because I want you to be able to sidestep these challenges when they come at you, and or I want to make these parts of your journey easier. Or if you've been through something like this, just know that you're not alone, right? That's when you become a super effective speaker, and that's when you become somebody that's not just a speaker, but you're a mentor, because that has people want to stay with you. And one more tip for those of you that are nervous, like me, to get out there and speak, and most of us are. You know, Jerry Seinfeld says that number one fear of Americans is public speaking. In fact, research will tell you the number one fear of Americans is public speaking. Now, the number two fear is dying. And so that means that most of us would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy, right? So what Serena and I invite you to do to help you conquer that fear, like Serena said, is to really let yourself experience the speaking engagement going really well in your mind before you get out there and step on stage. And when you get out there, rather than trying to talk to the whole room of people, talk to just one person. And I find it really helpful to have one or two people in the audience that I've sort of scouted out beforehand, and I know they're kind of my safe people. In fact, I might plant a friend of mine in the audience who's just going to sit there and smile at me the whole time. That can be a really smart thing to do. Another thing that we'll tell you is to never speak alone. You know, don't go book a speaking engagement and plan on getting in front of 6 people or 12 people with nobody else in the room that you know. Because you're vulnerable. You know, you're opening yourself up to holding space to a bunch of strangers. And you want to know that there's always going to be somebody in the room that has your back no matter what. You know, like if you had a coughing fit and you needed to step off stage, somebody would be in the room to pop up and be like, all right, everybody, just take a few breaths, and Serena's going to be right back in a moment. And in the meantime, turn to a partner and share one thing that you just learned. You know, just somebody who would pop up and just take the stage for a few minutes if you needed them to, or someone who could just go take you out for a cup of tea or a glass of wine or a piece of pie afterwards and just celebrate the triumphs and the failures. No matter how it's going to go, you want someone who's in that room who loves you no matter what.
They're just completely right. Don't underestimate bringing a buddy. That human connection, that someone who's there in the room no matter what happens, is essential for your psyche and your nervous system. And the other thing I want to really recommend you all do is focus on your breath. We tend to have really shallow breathing when we're afraid. And when you notice yourself speaking and speeding up and your breath getting shallow, it will signal to your whole body that there's something dangerous happening. But as a lot of you know who have any kind of yoga practice or exercise practice or meditation, that when you slow your breath down, it signals your body that things are all right and that you can calm down. And we're habituated in this culture to think that we have to get it all out really fast, we have to give all of our information really fast, and we forget that what our audience also needs time for is digesting the information we're giving. So you can take a breath at the end of a sentence. You can take a pause after you've just given a chunk of content to your audience. Let them digest it for a moment, catch your breath, and return again to speaking. And that will not only create calmness in your body, but you'll emanate calmness and confidence to the people that you're talking to.
I love that. Really well said. You know, and it occurs to me that it might be helpful for you all to see one of the outlines of a speaking engagement that I use. So I'll come up with, whether it's an outline of my Women's Leadership Summit or an outline of one of the purpose talks I used to give, it occurs to me that it might be helpful for you to see a few pages of one of the outlines of my speaking engagement so you can see how I bullet pointed out the points that I was going to make without necessarily scripting out the whole talk. Because Serena's right, you do not need to script out the whole talk. And having that outline is going to help you catch your breath between concepts. We're going to dive into the handout called Signature Talk Template. So that's the first handout you're going to want to have in front of you. And before we dive in there, I just want to emphasize how important your signature talk title is. All right. In fact, in some ways, I think Serena and I would agree that your signature talk title is more important than your what do you do statement. Because your signature talk title is going to attract the right people into your room. And remember that when you have a really solid magnetic signature talk title and you attract the right potential clients into your room, these are people who are now finding you rather than you having to go out chasing clients around yourself. And so you're going to want to be really, really clear with the titles that you give your signature talk. Here are some examples. You know, for those of you that are working with parents or mothers, you're going to want to put attention parents or attention moms in your title, and not necessarily the word attention. But if you're a parenting coach or a coach for mothers, you're going to want to put that in your title, right? And so, for instance, Eileen, if you're putting together a talk for parents and teens, you're going to want to put, you know, that this is a parent and teen connection barbecue. You know, barbecues might be a great way for you to get the word out. You know, Sophia and Angelica and Nancy and all of you who are working with life purpose or clarifying life purpose, you may have some version of that right in your title, right? Like this is the talk to come to if you're looking to clarify your purpose, right? Clarify your purpose or purpose clarity. And don't try to get too wordy here. You want your titles to be short and punchy, 3 to 5 words. You don't want a big, long title. And you want it to be very, very clear why people are coming, because even if you're speaking for free, people are paying you with their time. Okay? Janelle's an event coordinator. You know, Janelle, it might really work for you to start doing like monthly meetup gatherings for brides-to-be. You know, if you're a bride-to-be, come on down on a Sunday afternoon. You're going to get to sample some wedding cake. I'm going to give you a couple of tips to make your event really seamless. And I'm available if you need more support for your event, right? So very, very clear titles is what's going to have people come to you. And so, again, let's move now into really looking at the signature talk template. The signature talk template is really a template that you can use for any length of talk. It can be stretched out to even accommodate like a 1 or a 2 day talk. But ideally, this outline was meant to be used for a talk that's anywhere from like 20 minutes if you just have a short little bit of time at a networking event or something like that, to a talk that's 2 hours in length. I recommend that if you guys start doing signature talks in the evenings, for instance, or on a Sunday afternoon, that you start with a 2-hour time slot, or maybe a 90-minute time slot. But I'll tell you what, a 90-minute time slot goes really fast. You'll be surprised at how fast it goes when you're in person with people. I recommend 2 hours because you really don't want to keep people sitting in those seats longer than the end time of the talk, right? And so I'd rather have you actually finish a little bit early and send people on their way, but you want to be sure to leave yourself time to make your offer. And that's actually the number one thing I want you to walk away from this call with, is that the point of your talk is, yes, to serve, but it's also to sell. And I cannot tell you how many times I've had clients come running up to me at an event or shoot me a Facebook message, and they're like, oh my God, Stace, I did this talk and it was amazing, and I had 13 people signed up, and 12 people showed up, and they loved it, and they were thanking me afterward, and I forgot to make the offer. And it's not the end of the world, because we can still follow up with those people. But it's a huge missed opportunity when you don't make the offer. And so I get it. You're going to be nervous to make the offer, but I'm really going to ask you to begin with the end in mind and consider what you're going to say during your offer before you even decide what you're going to teach when you put your content together. All right? Serena, you want to say anything else about that?
Yeah, it's a great point. When you are honed in on what your offer is to begin with, it will also give you direct insight to what story to tell. Because your story is going to illuminate why your offer is effective, how you came to it, how it's helped people. So when you know what your offer is, you don't have to spend as much time as digging around with what story do I need to tell.
Perfect. That's exactly right. And so consider right now, what are the most important selling points of your 3 to 6 month long program, right? And really all of you should have a 6 month long program. And what are the most important selling points, right? Are you going to help people learn to really get out of stress and overwhelm and anxiety so that they can actually have a life again? Are you going to help them get really clear on what their next chapter is about so that they don't have to hate their work anymore? Are you going to get them connected so deeply to their own soul so that they don't have to spin out in indecision, right? Are you going to help moms who are stressed out and don't have any time actually reclaim their life so that they can have some time for themselves and be more effective, more loving moms, right? Get clear on what is the solution you're offering. And then what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, what prevented me from having the outcome that I'm teaching in my program? And what was the hardest time in my life, right, where I had to walk through this turning point, the hero's journey, the low point of my life that I had to get through in order to now have the solution that I teach people in my marketable program. And that's the story that you want to tell, right? That's the story, right? If you're working with divorced women, you want to tell about the time you went through a divorce and you were so overcome with grief that grief almost took you out of the game, and that you then learned how to actually grieve in a healthy way, how to move through the grief, and how to transform the grief into fuel for your new life. And you want to tell the story about how you were collapsed on the kitchen floor in a pile of tears because you didn't know how to live without your ex-husband. Or you want to tell the story about the time when, he walked away with all the furniture, or whatever that moment was. Rather than telling a story about concepts, you want to tell a story that includes a moment of turnaround where you can take your audience with you and they can be there with you because you're describing where you were, how emotional you were, what were the feelings you were feeling, You want to have a couple of moments like that in your story so that you bring them with you. That's going to build vulnerability. And then you want to bring in your credibility. Okay, so write that down. Every signature talk, you want to start your talk in the first few minutes. You always want to start your talk out with both vulnerability and credibility. So within the first few minutes of being on stage, you've let people know that you're human and that you also have some credibility behind you. Now, if you've never worked with a client before, that's okay. Your credibility could be something like, you know, one of the things that I offer my clients is hypnotherapy. And you might not know that 96% of people that attempt to quit smoking with a tool of hypnotherapy are actually able to quit smoking. That's how powerful hypnotherapy is, right? Now, you've just given yourself credibility with a statistic, with research. You know, if you're a coach, if you're a trained coach, you can talk about the power of coaching, that people are actually 90% more likely to follow through when they have a coach and they're working with a coach and they're telling that coach what it is, the changes that they're going to make, and that coach is actually holding them accountable on a regular basis, right? And so whatever your training is, whether it's massage therapy, whether it's hypnotherapy, whether it's EFT, there's research that shows how effective your modality is. So those can be great pieces of information to bring into your signature talk alongside that vulnerability. And I oftentimes see beginner speakers leave out one or the other. You know, either they get up there and they're really willing to be vulnerable and transparent and let people know how hard it's been, and they don't do a good enough job building their credibility, or they get up there and they sort of brag about how they changed their sister's life and they changed their neighbor's life and they've changed everybody's lives, and their tools are really, really effective at solving these problems, but they haven't let people know that they're human, that they've been on a hero's journey themselves. So you're going to want to be sure to do both.
And Sage, what I love what you're sharing about the vulnerability part in that moment where someone's up against something, whether it's grief or some obstacle, is to use details. Because storytelling has the power to paint a picture in someone's mind that's really vivid. And it's not a concept. And when we use details that actually happened, something someone said, the color of the curtains, something that really brings us into that moment in time, people can paint the picture in their mind, and that will stay with them for a long time. And the danger is to spend so much time describing that one moment and every little thing that built up to it, that we drag our potential listeners and clients down into a hole of despair. So it's really wise to balance that moment of extreme struggle with also how you got out of it. What are the things that you did to climb your way out, to transform, to change your life that are also really teachable to your clients that you also offer in your signature program?
Beautiful. I love that. So a couple of just logistical pieces. Serena and I highly recommend visiting the venue where you're going to talk before the night of your talk, so you can just get a sense of the space. It's really it's gonna calm you down a lot to do that. Always put out less chairs than there are people coming, and the reason is you don't want to be teaching to a bunch of empty chairs. Okay, so always put out less chairs than you think you need and have a stack of chairs in the corner, and you can always grab more chairs as people come in. But that way you're not speaking to a lot of empty chairs. It's a lot easier to add chairs in as people come in and have an assistant helping you do that, or just a buddy or one of your friends. You can ask them to come, and just when people come in, just grab another chair if all the chairs are full. It's a lot easier to do that than to take chairs away. And regardless of how many people are signed up for your signature talk, chances are not everybody's going to show up, all right? And that's not because of anything personal to do with you. It's just because life happens.
And it's also really effective if you can get to a room before your talk to set the door up at the back of the room. So when you're speaking, people aren't wandering through your space. So your back is up, you're actually looking at the open door, and the people who are listening to you have their back to the door. So people can wander in if they're late, which they often are, without disrupting your flow.
That's really important. A couple other logistical pieces are that you'll want to print out a couple copies of your script. I'll never forget the time a couple years ago when one of my clients, Dabney Alex, had one copy of her script, and she set it down really close to a candle, and it caught on fire. She ended up not having a script, so she had to wing it. Let's let Dabney's mistake be our gain, and I always like to print out an extra copy of my script and just put it in my purse. And that way, if anything were to happen to my regular script or anybody were to accidentally pick up my folder or anything like that, I'd have an extra copy in my purse. I find it really, really helpful to have a timer up next to where I'm talking so that I can keep an eye on the time. And if I put people in partner exercises, I could give them 2 minutes each, and that allows me to really relax and not have to keep my eye on the clock. And I really recommend, and for me, I really like having a little bit of music to set the tone. And there's something really nice about when people walk into a space and there's some music playing, it just automatically sets the tone rather than that nervous energy of like people kind of waiting around for the talk to begin and they're not quite sure what to do with themselves. Handouts are really nice. Especially because handouts help reach a lot of different people with a lot of different learning styles. The other thing about handouts is that if you're going to pass out a handout at the end to have people sign up for a discovery session, it can be really nice if you've passed out a handout in the beginning of the talk, because now people are used to getting pieces of paper from you, and it feels a little less salesy, right? That you've given them some content, you've given them a handout. They love handouts because they get to take something home with a few bullet points on it. Don't put too much information on the handout because that's going to be overwhelming and you'll have people thinking they need to read it. So just create simple handouts. But that way, if you pass out a sign-up form for a discovery session at the end of the night, or you could even staple it onto the back of the handout, they could rip off the back of their handout, fill out whether they want a discovery session or not, and they could just pass it in. That way it just doesn't feel quite as intrusive, right? It's like they're already used to getting things from you. So let's talk about those first few minutes that you're on stage. When you're first on stage, highly recommend that you guys don't introduce yourself right away. It's not about you. Remember, it's about the people in your room. So rather than getting up there and saying, "Hi, my name's Sage Levine, and I run a company about helping women start businesses and double their time off," right? I want to ask some questions when I'm first on stage to let people know you're in the right place if you're going through these certain things in your life. Now, here's the trick to these engaging questions. And Serena and I recommend that you start out every speaking engagement with some engaging questions, because it's going to make your audience engaged from the very beginning. It's going to let them know that they don't get to just sit back and be lazy, that you're going to actually engage them. It's going to put you at ease because you'll get some audience participation right off of the bat. And the truth is that there's really 2 times during your signature talk that you're probably going to be the most nervous. And the first one is the introduction. Those first few minutes, we're always the most nervous when we first get up there. And the second one is the offer, right? And so memorizing how you're going to start out your talk is going to bring you a lot of peace of mind in terms of actually getting up and getting started. And so the trick here is to let people know the name of the talk that they just attended. Welcome, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. Congratulations for taking the time to really focus on your next divine right relationships. And this talk is titled 3 Keys to Having Your Soulmate Relationship. And I'm guessing, and just please raise your hands if this is you, raise your hand if you are absolutely done with dating the same person over and over and over again. And raise your hand high. And as I'm saying that, my hand is actually high up in the air. I'm raising my hand loud and proud because I'm letting them know it's safe here. You don't get to be lazy in my room. You're going to be awake. I'm going to teach you something. You're in the right place. Raise your hand if you're ready to stop dating the same person over and over and over again, right? And if somebody's attending a talk called 3 Keys to Your Next Soulmate Relationship, chances are they've had that experience where they've dated the same person. Now, maybe not all of them have, and that's okay. And if not all of them have had that experience of dating the same person over and over and over again, they might not raise their hand, and you might want to speak to that because you want them to know that you're actually awake and paying attention. So you might say something like, okay, I see not everybody's hands went up. That's totally okay. So for those of you that maybe you're not dating the same person over and over again, I'm just curious. I'm making an assumption that you're here because you're ready to have a relationship where you're an adult, you're coming from a place of wholeness, and you get to fall into a level of love that's maybe deeper than you've ever experienced before, or at least as deep as you've ever experienced before, right? That's a question, that's an assumption that everybody's probably going to say yes to. And those are the kinds of questions that you really want to ask. Okay, and so you would go ahead and say that question and you'd raise your hand. Am I making the right assumption? Raise your hand if that's true for you. If you're here because you're committed to doing whatever it takes, to looking at yourself, to growing yourself, to learning how to get in sync with the opposite sex, to the point where you really are ready to experience as much or more love than you've ever had in your whole life in your next relationship. Raise your hand if that's you, and then just look around and let people know. Just look around and see whose hands are up. Okay, awesome. You're in the right place. For those, you can. Let me back up. The reason that we do this, right, is because we want to get everyone engaged right from the start. So again, I'll just underline. Choose a couple of questions. You don't need 5 questions. You just need a couple that are likely to have as many people raise their hands as possible. Then I advise you to let them know that it really is possible to have what it is that you're telling them they can have, whether it's a more empowered relationship with yourself, whether it's being able to make quick decisions and ask for what you want, whether it's the right relationship, whether it's a healthy relationship with your teenager. Let them know it really is possible for you to have that. And what's that going to do? That's going to give people hope right off the bat, right? They're going to be engaged. They're going to be like, okay, I'm ready. Like, teach me what you have to teach me because thank you. I want that. It's why I'm here, right? And in fact, you can take that a step further, and instead of thanking them for attending your talk, congratulate them for attending your talk, right? So often we say, oh, thank you for coming. But guess what? It's not about you. It's about them. Congratulate them for taking the time out of their busy lives to actually focus on what it is they want. Now, when you congratulate them, you're taking a stand for them. And that's the first step in you becoming a mentor and you becoming somebody that they potentially want to invest in themselves through your program. All right? And then we're going to encourage you to give some brief introductions. Allow people to introduce themselves briefly. If there's more than 12 people in the room, Serena and I would advise you to have them turn to a partner or get in groups of 3 to do short introductions. But if there's 12 or less, you can absolutely have everybody just say one sentence to introduce themselves. Now, you're going to want to model this and be really careful because people can easily hijack your room and start telling their whole life story. And now 8 minutes later, the whole group is starting to fall asleep. Okay, so don't let that happen. You want to pre-frame any introductions you have your group make, and you want to be sure to let them know we only have time for you to each just tell one sentence. And so here's what we want to do. We want to go around and hear from each of you what's the biggest thing you want to get out of tonight, or what's the single most painful thing you've ever been through in relationship. And then you can model it, and you can say, my name's Sage, and the single most painful thing I've been through is divorcing my husband. I thought I would never love again, and that's why I'm here. And again, one sentence, and I'm just going to remind you guys to get to the heart of the matter. If you go beyond one sentence, I'm going to make a little heart with my hands, and I'm going to tell you to wrap it up, and you're not allowed to take that personally. It's just because we have a lot of content to cover tonight. And then turn people loose to introduce themselves. You can also do one-word introductions, like what's one word of your present state of being if you want to keep it moving really, really quickly, or if you have, a half an hour instead of 2 hours type of thing. And that way you get everybody's voice in the room in a very, very short amount of time.
This is one of the most masterful things I think I learned from you, Sage, on this template and have been doing. When the sound barrier has been broken by the people in the room, where it's not just your voice entering that space, when you have the people there adding, it changes the entire atmosphere from one person talking to many people connecting. And that's the beginning of creating relationship. It's a really beautiful thing.
Serena's really right. And this is what has a signature talk really different from like a speech that you would give on a stage. The reason you want people engaged right away, you want their voice in the room, is because this is not a speech. This is a facilitated experience where you're helping people actually invest in themselves. Think about it. If you're sitting in a room listening to somebody talk, but you don't get to say a darn thing, how invested are you really in what it is that they're saying? Right? But the minute you get your voice in the room, now you've invested something. You have spoken up. You have contributed with your voice. And so you have asked your audience, your participants. I actually prefer to think of your folks as participants, not just an audience. You've asked your participants to invest with their voice. And once they've invested with their voice, it's much easier for them to invest with their money. Okay? And the next step that you'll see on the handout is that piece around balancing your credibility with your humanity, or your credibility with your vulnerability or your approachability, right? And to really allow both to shine through in your story. And if you're like me, you may want to have people do a brief introduction before you tell your whole story. You may tell people one thing about yourself and then do some brief introductions. But if you're like me, what I've found is that I'm much more comfortable telling people my story for a few minutes once other people's voices have gotten into the space. Because now we're connected, people have spoken up, and I feel a certain level of permission to tell my story. And I'm guessing you will too. So play with this template just the way it is for your next couple of signature talks. And then if you want to start playing, once you're used to this template, if you want to start playing with it after that, then play with it. But that brings me to the point where you're going to, again, tell your story as a mirror of your offer, right? So whatever you know you're going to be offering after your content, you want to be sure your story really leads into the opportunity to work more with you, right? And so you do that by letting people know that you've been there too. Here's what happened to me. This was my turning point. Now I help clients do this professionally, and I'm happier than I ever have been before. This is also a really great place to go ahead and let people know if you're interested in getting more support, and if you came here with any sort of a heavy heart or feeling overwhelmed in your relationship or overwhelmed in your relationship with your kids, I want you to know that I'm available to support you further even after tonight is over. And before you leave tonight, you'll have the opportunity to find out about a way to continue working with me. Whether or not you want to continue working with me is totally okay. I just want to let you know that that'll be available at the end of the night. Right? And so when you do that, what you do is you let people know, like for instance, if they were in a department store trying to decide whether to buy a new outfit, it's like giving them the opportunity to try on the outfit before they decide if they want to buy it, right? It's respectful to let people know that your offer is coming at the end of the night, because some of the folks that come into your room, you might be the very first person that has let them know that you understand the pain they're going through. And they might be sitting there already afraid that at the end of the night they're going to have to go back into their dysfunctional relationship or into their crappy job or into their, horrible relationship with their teenage son, and they don't have any support. And so never underestimate the power of seeding your offer. That's what it's called. You're planting a seed about your offer before you even start teaching, and you can do it in one sentence, just like I demonstrated. Remember, you have this recording. You can go back and listen to this recording. It's going to help people feel really safe. And that way, when you get to the offer, you'll be less nervous, and people will know that it's coming. Okay, so let's talk about your teaching section of the workshop. So many entrepreneurs get overwhelmed by this section, and don't worry, you're going to get access to a bonus training toward the end of your program here where I'm going to help you create and really design and brainstorm about some of the specific content for your workshops. So if you feel totally lost on how to design content, you're going to get more help on this piece. But for now, I want to remind you that content is not as important as context. Right? If you've set a great context and if you've gotten people connected and you've set a container for the learning to happen in the room, the truth is that it almost doesn't matter what you teach them. What really matters is that you just do give them some great content, something they can really use. And again, not more than 3 key teaching pieces, or else you're going to start to fill your participants too full and they might leave feeling overwhelmed. And of course, they'll also stop seeing the value of working with you long term because they'll think that they need to go implement everything you already taught them, right, before they ever sign up to do more with you. But really, when you're considering which 2 to 3 things to teach, always give them some of your best stuff. Give them some great content. Be generous. I hear business coaches telling their clients all the time to hold back their best stuff and save your best stuff until people have paid you thousands of dollars. I totally disagree. I've always found that when I lead with generosity, more than enough people come and my programs sell out, okay? People buy from people they trust, and it just never feels good to learn from someone that feels like they're holding back. So choose a few key things that you want to teach or key exercises that you want to do, and then you'll want to alternate between content and expression exercises, right? So you're going to want to alternate between like teaching them something and then having them actually express and interact with what you're teaching, okay? You want to alternate. Don't just talk at them the entire time, right? Once you've taught them something, then let them turn to a partner and share their desires or share their challenges. There's a saying that says, impression without expression leads to depression. You always want to give people a chance to integrate what you're learning by turning to their journal and writing a few things down for themselves, doing a self-reflection exercise, or maybe by turning to a partner and doing a quick share both ways. You can also open up the room to have people to have people share in the room, right? Ask people to raise their hand and answer a question or share their biggest aha and how they think it will affect their life or their relationships or their career or their health, right? And as you teach any workshop or put together any speaking engagement, your signature talk, you always want to be in touch with what I call the gap and help your participants see the gap, okay? And what I mean by that is the gap between where your participants are, what their challenges are, what their reality is, and where they would really like to be, okay? You want to be sure that you always cover the 2 sides of the gap, okay? What people want, their desire and their vision, is one side of the gap, and the other side of the gap is their challenge, their struggle, like what's in the way. So in any talk or workshop, you want to give people an opportunity to really get in touch with those dreams and desires so they can see a greater vision for themselves without really tainting that. You want to put them in exercises where they can paint a picture of their greatest dream actually coming into reality and give them a chance to see the possibility of what can happen when they get more support, of course, right? And then you also want to give people a chance to flush out their biggest challenges, right? To really discuss or share or interact with what's getting in the way of them getting what they want. What's the biggest thing that's in the way of them having their dream? And when you show people that then you can be a mentor that helps them close the gap between what they're challenged by and what they really want, then it makes it obvious that it's an absolutely realistic solution to sign up for your programs and get more support. Okay? Does that make sense, everybody? Because when you show people that you can really hold their hand and help them take that journey from A to B, that's when it really creates a space in the room where you don't actually have to keep selling yourself anymore, right? So you might do a discussion or a partner exercise or a guided visualization to help them access their greatest vision for themselves, what they most want. And then it can be really helpful to go to the other side of the gap and get them in touch with those challenges, have them reflect on that with a partner. And in some instances, it's more beneficial to actually start with the challenges before your participants get in touch with their greatest dreams and desires, right? If you're working with, women over 50, helping them reignite their career in their middle age, if you're working with women that are having, sort of a middle age breakdown, they might be much more in touch with their challenges than they are their desires. So you might need to have them flush out their challenges and struggles before they actually can get in touch with their visions for themselves. Does that make sense? So it doesn't actually matter which side of the gap you start on. It just matters that you start one place and then move to the other so that you identify the gap really clearly. An example of this, let me give you an example. I think that'll help. An example of this would be that one of my clients actually designed a purpose clarity workshop. So the first thing she did at the beginning of her workshop was she asked those enrolling questions that we talked about, right? A question like, how many of you are here because you want to experience more passion in your career, right? Something that's easy to have people raise their hand to. And then she got people connected and sharing their intentions for what they wanted to get out of the workshop. Next, she told her story, which exemplified how easy it is to get off track and be on autopilot in life. She told a story of her turning point where she was totally hating her job and feeling lifeless, and how she really nearly lost all of her joy by staying in this job, and how she was able to find her way through to changing her career, finding the courage she needed inside of herself to completely redesign her career and start over again and get back to a sense of purpose. And then she went into a teaching piece on passion and how passion has guided her. And she shared some research and some statistics on passion and some definitions of passion. She talked about how people lose touch with their passions. And from there, she went into a partner exercise where people asked each other about their deepest desire, right? And then she talks about the cost of not following your passion, and she puts people back in that partner exercise, and this time they share their biggest fear. What are you most afraid of? Okay, do you see how this is flowing, right? And from there, she goes to a big group discussion around people's fears and what they want. And lastly, she does a piece in the big group around comfort zone. She talks about how easy it is to settle for less and how essential it is to be willing to change the course of your life rather than stay in your comfort zone. She does a whole lecture with some really cool pieces of research and some stories about the comfort zone and the mindset of why it's easier to stay in your comfort zone, the dangers of not learning to bust through your comfort zone. And finally, she has the participants do an exercise where they really inventory times in their life when they were stuck in their comfort zone and times when they were able to stretch outside their comfort zone and try something new in their life. And then she opens up the whole room for what's your biggest takeaway, right? What's the biggest thing you got out of being here? And then she moves into her offer, okay? And she's totally positioned now to make an offer because people are in touch with what they want and they're in touch with some of the mindset tools they really need to implement in order to get what they want. and they're seeing the value of having long-term support to actually move toward their dreams and desires. And so you can see how she used this very template that we're going through on this training to really help her participants get in touch with their greatest vision for themselves. And she set herself up really well to have her participants see the value of working more with her. So a few more tips. Again, I think it's very useful to have at least one handout that people can take with them. I find that I like to have at least one partner exercise during my speaking engagements. I like to get people engaged and connected to each other. Remember, connection is currency, and when people feel connected to each other and they drop into a space of feeling intimately connected, they're going to want more of that. And they can have that with you through your program. I also suggest that you connect the dots for your participants by letting them know why what you're teaching is important. Okay, so put a little star by this on page 3 of your handout. This is a big thing that a lot of speakers forget to do. We start teaching things without giving people any context. And write this down, context really matters 10 times more than content. And what I mean by that is that when you create a container for learning, and when you make it safe for people to speak up and connect, that's actually 10 times more important when you're actually selling something than the content that you teach. Because think about it, content is a dime a dozen. We can all go online and we can get information about whatever we want at the tips of our fingertips 24 hours a day. But when people walk into a space where they get to be honest, they get to say what's on their mind, and they get to feel safe to be vulnerable and reveal themselves, and you're letting them know, here's some content, here's some ideas, and here's how knowing this can actually change your life. You're connecting the dots for them. Now you're becoming a facilitator and a mentor right off the bat. And you having another program available to them is going to be a no-brainer for the clients that are right for you, right? And so one of my clients last year was teaching the villain, victim, hero framework. I don't know if any of you guys know that framework. It's called the triangle, and it's called villain, victim, hero. You know, and we get stuck on one of the corners of the triangle. We get stuck so often in our lives, either in victim or being a villain or being a hero. And when you can pop off the triangle, you can create so much good in your life. And her and I she was a private client of mine, and we had a coaching session together, and she was explaining to me that she was teaching this incredible content, and nobody really seemed to think that it was that incredible. They were all like, great. So I'm either a victim, villain, or a hero. Who cares? And I explained to her that she actually had to teach them why that triangle was important and how they could look for examples and times in their life when they were stuck on the triangle. And she needed to give them at least one tool about how to get off the triangle, right? Like she needed to make it relevant. And that's where context comes in. That's where connecting the dots comes in. Okay, so when you guys are laying out your 2 or 3 exercises that you're going to do, and the truth is that during a 2-hour talk, you're really only going to have time for 2 or 3 actual exercises. So don't try to squeeze 7 exercises in there. Always, always, always tie back your content to the needs of your participants. Okay, that's going to engage them. It's going to have them ready for what's next.
One of my favorite phrases for a tie back is so that. So when I'm talking about something that's relevant to me and important to me, and I turn it into, it's important for me to breathe while I tell stories because it helps me feel calm. And if you're looking to use story in a way that makes you feel calm and powerful, this is what you can do. So that when you're on stage, that you can feel confident in your sweet spot, you can calm yourself with your breath. So a so that statement or so that you can or you will become are often great ties between you and them. And like Sage said, when you tie it back to them, you also wake them up that you're not just talking about your own personal experience, some isolated island of like, I can do this because I'm amazing. But you're tying it to the relevance of being human. And if I can do this, I'm a human being, you can do this too. And it makes them wake up to the possibility that their lives could change as well.
Really well said. Really, really well said. I hope you're taking notes because there's some great information being pulled out of us that's not necessarily on your handout. I'm moving to page 4, and I'm going to really encourage you guys to consider that the information that you give in your signature talk wants to be the information that would come before what you teach in your 6-month program, right? And so there's a concept called spiral marketing, and for those of you that continue on to Leverage with us next year, we'll be diving in much more detail into the concept of spiral marketing. But for now, what I want to tell you about spiral marketing is that you want the way that you market yourself to always lead into what's next for your people. And so here's an example of that. If you're a healer for women going through menopause, instead of telling them exactly what to do to balance their hormones, you may give them a checklist, right, that provides all the early warning signs for hormonal imbalance and premenopausal symptoms so that women could come to your talk and get really clear, what stage of menopause am I in? Am I in perimenopause? What are the symptoms that I'm experiencing? And how do I start to look at that and identify how to best take care of myself? And you may not have time to actually go into all the solutions that you might be able to give them in your 6-month program, right? Obviously, if somebody's going through menopause and they're starting to struggle with that experience, getting a few tips in a 2-hour lecture is not necessarily, not that this is a lecture, I just told you it wasn't, but in a 2-hour workshop, isn't necessarily going to heal them from menopause forever. But having a mentor and a guide and a cheerleader by their side to walk them through their first few months, their first 3 or 6 months of menopause, or their next 3 or 6 months of menopause could absolutely change their life. And so the concept of spiral marketing basically says that when you offer somebody a solution, inherent in that solution is the next problem, right? So inherent in now being able to identify where you're at in the menopausal journey, inherent in that solution is the problem. Now that I know what I'm actually struggling with, what do I do about it, right? Here's another example. If you're a relationship coach, you may teach people a little bit about online dating during your signature talk. People would love to learn about online dating. It's like the hottest topic if you're a relationship coach. But inherent in the problem of knowing a little bit about online dating is that you still, after the talk is over, you still may need someone to help you create your online dating profile. Or you still may need someone to hold your hand and actually hold your feet to the fire and make sure that you go out on these dates and debrief the dates after you go out on the date so that you can have someone who's a professional to talk to about how did I show up? How did he show up? How did I actually feel during the date? And to actually translate some of what happened in that experience into a real life knowing of whether this might be my future partner or not, right? And so we're not manipulating anybody, but inherent in the solutions that you offer somebody is always another problem. That's just universal law, right? Life is a spiral, right? The ocean waves, they go in and they go out, right? The ocean rises with the tide and then it falls. There's an expansion and there's a contraction. And inherent in every solution, there is some next step that people are going to want to take. And that's what you want to consider when you think about what you teach in a signature talk and how it leads up to your offer. All right. So now that I've probably sufficiently filled you up with information, taking a nice deep breath and remembering that if these are some new concepts to you, this is a beefy call. I like to teach you guys as much as I can. As many of you know, Serena and I, we don't hold anything back. We're giving it all to you. These are power-packed trainings. Remember that some of this is just going to go in your library, right? If you were to leave this call and go book a signature talk for next week, and if you were to even do 3 or 4 things that you learned on this call, you're going to be ahead of the game. okay? A lot of what we're teaching you is mastery level, and remember that this stuff is going to be in your library. I've had people listening to this particular training call on Signature Talks because it is so rich. I've had people go back and listen to this training call several times.
Yeah, and for a lot of you who have experience speaking on stage, speaking to a group, teaching, you already have some tricks up your sleeves that are the same or similar than stage is giving you now. So you can lean into the places that you already have success and you feel comfortable, and then just take on a few more things and really bringing the Signature Talk into your offer. Because you're not just in service, you are actually there to sell your services and let people know that you're open for business. And for those of you who have never been on stage, who you're already sweating just listening on the call, keep breathing, and pick out what would feel like a really easy beginning, middle, and end for yourself. Make it really simple. Begin with your story, pick one thing to do in the middle, and then wrap it up with your offer. And start with that structure. And I can't overestimate the balance between not making it perfect and also practicing. Because when you practice with your buddy, your signature story, and your offer, when you get it out of your mouth, the syllables, you actually hear yourself say, I have a signature program for this much money. I actually am an expert in this area. When you begin to say it and the words come out of your mouth, you start to feel more comfortable doing it.
Beautiful. I love that. Really, really good. Keep it simple, especially for those of you that are just getting started. And for those of you that have joined Toastmasters, congratulations. It's going to be a great place to practice. And if you have not joined Toastmasters yet, I highly recommend it. Now, Toastmasters is a great place to get some experience in front of people. But remember, Toastmasters isn't going to teach you to make offers. There's a lot of incredible speakers at Toastmasters that really are not making any money from their speaking engagement. So remember to balance out what you learn with Toastmasters with what you learn in the Entrepreneurial Leadership Academy so that we can get you making some money. All right. So here's the deal. You also always, you want to tell people what you're going to teach, right? This is kind of like a big picture tip here. Write this down. You always kind of at the beginning of a talk, you want to tell people what you're going to teach, and then you want to teach, and then you want to tell people what you told them, right? I learned this when I was a 7th grade science teacher. My very, very first teacher trainer was like, here's the big trick to teaching. You tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. Because when you do it that way, they actually remember, right? When you take the time to review. So always take a moment to review when you're getting ready to make your offer. And then you're going to want to close your gap. Now, I'll make a quick note here about slideshows. For those of you that are nervous to talk and those of you that are like me and it can be easy to get off topic, having a slideshow is a great way to keep yourself on point. If you do decide to show some slides, keep them really simple so that people aren't sitting there trying to read the slides instead of listen to you. Keep the slides really simple. Don't put too much text on the slides. There's a great book called Slideology. If you know you'd like to learn more about how to put together a slideshow that's effective, again, that book is called Slideology, and it's in your Rolodex. So be sure to review, and then let's talk a little bit about the offer because this is really the most important part, right? In order to transition into your offer, my favorite way of transitioning into an offer at a speaking engagement is to actually ask people what they just got out of the talk. I like to take a moment to ask people, what's the biggest thing you've learned so far? Because now you've gotten them in touch with the value that they received. Then that also actually gives me a moment to catch my breath and get ready for the fact that I'm going into my offer because I'm listening to them tell me what was the biggest thing they learned. And chances are they got something really powerful out of coming to your talk. So once they've shared a few things about what they learned, just take 3 to 5 shares, that's when you want to say, I'm so glad that you got all of that out of this time that we had together. And really, it's because of what you just shared that I created my 6 steps to having a soulmate breakthrough program, or whatever the title of your program is, right? And then you want to tell, ideally, a client success story, or revisit the story that you told at the beginning of your talk, and you can talk a little bit more about the journey that you've been on and why having some of the tools that you teach in your 6-month program has really changed your life. Right? And if you haven't worked with a client yet and you want to tell a client story, you can tell a story about a time when you helped a friend. And you don't even have to tell people it was your friend. You can just say, I worked with a woman named Emily, and Emily had dated the same guy over and over and over again. And it's okay if Emily was your friend. You were working with her. And if you helped her and you helped her break that pattern, use her as a case study. You can even change her name if she would rather remain confidential. So this is a great transition into making your offer, right? Ask for some audience participation, ask them what they learned, and then tell some client success stories and revisit the benefits of what it is that you do and who your program is for, right? So at that point, you may say something like, here's the deal. I did not have a healthy relationship until I was 40 years old. And so if I can find my way into having a healthy relationship, so can you. And a lot of the professional women that come see me, they don't actually feel like they have enough time to go out there and date. And they think, how am I going to meet my man when I'm exhausted and I work all the time? And so one of the things that we do together is we actually work together to find a space in their schedule to start to meet men online and weed through the men that aren't necessarily their best fit or aren't necessarily the right long-term guy, so that they can actually carve out the time in their weekly schedule to meet only the guys that are actually good candidates. So what am I doing when I give that example? Well, I'm actually addressing the objections that some of the women in the audience are going to have before I've even made the offer. Does that make sense? And that bullet point is on page 5 of your handout. To really be thinking through how can you address some of people's objections regarding whether they have the time or not, or whether they have the money or not, before you even make the offer, right? Because now, when you've addressed those objections, when you go to make the offer, those objections just aren't going to come up as much for people, because they're going to know that one of the things they get to do if they work with you is to actually have you help them find the time to go out on the dates, okay? And so now they're going to be putting themselves in a place of actually imagining themselves being your client and getting that support from you, rather than caught up in their own mental objections in their head. This is really good stuff, isn't it? All right. And that's where you want to describe your offer. And I emphasize this really, 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 really carefully. Write this down. I don't want you guys getting confused here. You have planted seeds about the fact that people can work with you for 3 months or 6 months. You've planted those seeds. But the actual offer I recommend you make is for your discovery session, okay? I do not recommend you guys go out there and start making offers for your 6-month program, all right? Here's why. If you're newer at speaking, if you're newer at selling from the stage, we want to set you up for success. And the number one way to do that is to have you make an offer that's easy for people to say yes to. And so what that means is that you offer something for free that people could easily raise their hand for and say, yeah, that's a low risk to go sit down with you one-on-one for a 30-minute conversation, right? That's easy for people to say yes to. But here's the thing is you still have to sell that discovery session, because even though it's easy for people to say yes to, they're still investing with their time. All right? So build the value of your discovery session. Okay? So write this down so that it's really clear. Plant seeds for your program, but make an offer for your discovery session. Okay? Does that make sense? So when you actually go to make your offer, you're going to clearly list out the outcomes or the results of your discovery session. Okay? You've mentioned that people can work with you for 6 months, and that's great. And it's given people a sense or a taste of what it would feel like to be your client, which is very, very good. But then when you go to make the offer, you'll let people know, so here's the next step. I'm going to recommend that you take me up on what's called a soulmate breakthrough session. And this is a time where we're going to sit down and get you very clear on how to prioritize the things that you want to create most in your next relationship. And and you're going to let them know what are the results of sitting down with you for that discovery session. All right, this is a 30-minute conversation. It's a totally free conversation. And if it's a fit to do more work together after you have that conversation with me, I'll let you know how you would be able to do that. And if it's not a fit, if you walk away from that session having a breakthrough about how you communicate with men, because we're going to get you a couple of individualized tools during that session, and if you walk away feeling like you got what you needed, no problem. Whether you decide to work with me or not after the session is totally okay with me. But I'm committed to getting you where you want to go in your next relationship. And so if you got a lot out of tonight and you're sitting here wondering, how else am I going to actually get myself supported as I go out there and start dating men, and you know that stuff is going to come up for you when you start going out on dates or when you go out on your next date, I'd like to be somebody who continues to support you one way or the other, right? Whether it's just with this breakthrough session or whether it's for 3 or 6 more months. And so I recommend you take me up on this gift. It's a totally no obligation free session. And I'm going to have you go ahead and turn to the second page of the handouts that I just passed out to you and just let me know yes or no if you'd like to take me up on a soulmate breakthrough session. Keeping in mind that I am really committed to giving you value during this 30 minutes that we're sitting down together, whether or not you decide to work with me. And then just let me know what days and times of the week are best for you. And I really look forward to sitting down and chatting with some of you one-on-one and just getting to know you, getting to know what your relationship history has been like. I'm going to send you a little questionnaire that you'll fill out before the session. And what have been the biggest challenges in your relationship? And what are you really looking for? And then we'll take it from there. So go ahead and fill that form out right now. And then just rip that form off so that you can keep the first handout and pass the second handout over down to me here, and I'll collect those. I'm just going to take a few moments to collect those. So just take a nice deep breath and just make a few notes of anything that you know you're walking away with tonight so that you're sure not to forget anything. Now's the time to just write yourself down little affirmations and recollections, and we're just going to take a moment here and see I'm talking and I'm modeling this in the way that I would do it during a signature talk. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want you guys to hear how this sounds. I want you to be very clear and very directive when you're letting people know it's time to go ahead and take you up on an offer for a discovery session. Do not be wishy-washy, and do not be ambiguous, okay? Be very clear. Here's what I want you to do. I'm passing around a clipboard. I'm passing around these little half sheets of paper, or you already have a piece of paper in your packet. And then take a few minutes. Give yourself that space, okay? It's very easy to stand up there thinking, oh, my God, people are going to get offended. Not true, all right? You just gave them an hour and a half of free content, okay? 99 out of 100 people would be absolutely, totally okay with you taking a few minutes to let people know how to get more of what it is that you just gave them.
I love everything that you're saying, Sage. It's so really clear. And for all the women to really pay attention to the seasoned advice you're giving them about making an offer, because this is where we tend to back off the most. We practice or perhaps plan everything up to the offer, and we're like, oh, if there's enough time, leave time and be really clear about what you have to offer.
And even if you're running a few minutes over, plant your feet on the ground and take the stage and make your offer. All right? You built that stage. You booked the venue. You invited people there. You have a right to make the offer. Okay? And so again, go ahead.
One of the things I love that you say, Sage, and that's helped me a lot in making my offer, is that you tell me not to take jurisdiction over someone else's decision. I'm not allowed to play God and say what people should or shouldn't do. My only responsibility is to stand in my own shoes and make an offer and allow all the adults in the room to take it or not, because that's what it is. It's an offer. I hear again and again from my clients saying, I don't want to sound too salesy. Salesy is when you try to convince someone of something, when you talk on and try to convince them that something is good or valuable. But this is a very different thing. This is standing in the place that I have something that I believe is valuable because I lived it. I experienced it. And I may even have experiences with my clients. So I know it's valuable. And it's an offer for you to say yes or no to. And I'm not going to convince you. I'm here just to give you the choice. And those are very different realms.
That's great. That's great. Stay on your own side of the fence, right? Let your clients decide if they want to take you up on it. You stand on your side of the fence and let them know how beautiful the view is over here, right? That's your job. And then always let people know that you have limited spots, because the truth is that you do not have an unlimited amount of time. And I would open up enough slots just so that about a third of the room could sign up, okay? So, for instance, if there's 12 people in your room, you might say, I have about 4 spots open this month, maybe 5 in my calendar to sit down with you guys one-on-one. So grab a spot right now if you'd like to take me up on this. And if for some reason I run out of spots this month and more than 4 of you want to take me up on it, I'll get you on a waiting list and get you in as soon as possible. But I just want to let you know my time's limited, right? That's just honoring of yourself. Don't let people know that this is an unlimited offer and they can call you anytime. Let people know I've actually opened up about 4 or 5 spots this month to sit down with people one-on-one. And, this month I'm doing totally free breakthrough sessions for people. And that doesn't mean that you can't do free breakthrough sessions for people next month, but you're letting people know that this is a limited opportunity. And then you want to wrap up with an emotional reason why people really should take advantage of this now and take the time to fill out the application. So an example of that might be, I would be honored after meeting every single one of you that came out tonight. I feel a kindred connection with some of you, to be honest, and I would just be honored to actually support you, to get in touch with that deep inner knowing and to be by your side for the weeks and the months that I know that it takes to really not recreate that same dysfunctional relationship. And I know for me, my relationship at the end of the day, it is the most important part of my life. It's the thing in my life that brings me by far the most happiness. And I want that for every single one of you. And so I would just be honored to get to sit down and offer you guys this totally free soulmate breakthrough session so we can really get you back on track toward creating the relationship that you desire, right? And it sounds like that, and it's an emotional reason to say yes now, okay? Now here's a big piece of making an offer. Be sure to write this down. Do not let anybody make an announcement after you've made your offer, okay? Be willing to stand at the front of the room and hold the tension that's been created when you make your offer, all right? Pass around the registration forms, let people sign up and claim their discovery session, and then let people know that it's been an incredible opportunity to meet them and to please hang out, that you're going to be answering questions about discovery sessions and about your programs, and to get 3 hugs before they leave. And again, you cannot wait to sit down and have some time with them during these one-on-one sessions, and that you bless and send love on their path of their next divine right relationship. And thank you for coming. And you're done. And always leave with one more quick invitation and one more reminder that you can't wait to sit down with some of them one-on-one. And then do not keep talking at the end of your talk, right? Make time to actually collect those discovery session handouts that people have filled out. hold the tension. Don't let somebody get in front of your audience while people are filling out their discovery session forms and say, there's a car with its lights on in the parking lot, right? Because it's going to take all of the attention away from your offer. And the whole reason that people are in that room is because you are a professional and you deserve to get paid for what it is that you do. And yes, you're going to give to them and you're going to show up and serve them no matter what. But your offer it's the most important piece. And when you have friends and when you have staff in the room, let them know that you're nervous to make the offer and that when you start talking about your breakthrough session, to please hold space with you. Okay, and remind them to please not make any announcements after you make your offer. Now, if you're doing a 2-hour workshop, another option that you have is to make your offer right around the 75-minute mark or the 90-minute mark. You can make your offer. You can take a quick break and let people turn in their discovery session handout. You can come back and teach one more piece of content before you turn everybody loose. And lastly, we have a script for you about exactly what to say when you're approaching a venue with your free workshops or to do a signature talk, and that's on page 9 of your handout. And so with that, just a quick reminder that you also have the hosting and marketing speaking engagements handout. That's going to be a cheat sheet for how to actually market your talk. I just want to emphasize and remind you guys that marketing your talk is the most important thing, because if you don't have people in the seats, you don't have butts in seats, you don't really have potential clients. And so really marketing your signature talk is almost more important than deciding what you're going to say, right? Because if you don't have anybody there, you don't have anybody to teach to. And so I'm going to strongly encourage you to spend at least 2 to 3 times more doing the marketing of your signature talk than creating the content. The content is the fun part, and so many of you are going to be tempted to create content in a closet. But if you create that content in a closet and you don't spend time actually getting people to come to your workshops and your signature talk, then you're not going to have any clients, right? And so market. Be willing to do more than you think you need to do to actually get people to show up. Okay? Do more than you think you need to do. Is there anything last you want to leave everyone with, Serena?
I just want to thank you, Sage, so much for inviting me on this call to help support the women and remind all the women that mastery really comes from taking a risk. Step by step, taking a risk and learning from your actual experience. So when you're ready to go out and give a talk, whether it's to 6 people or 60 people, that those experiences are so valuable and will lead you to mastery if you keep on it. So I encourage you all to do it.
Okay. Did you hear that, ladies? You got it? Big round of applause. Woo!
Woohoo!
You made it through the Signature Talk training. We love you and we bless you, and we'll see you next week. And be looking for our photos on Facebook of us in the rainforest.
Good luck, everyone.
Big hug, and we can't wait to hear about all the signature talks that you have booked, because now you know what you're doing.
Woohoo!
Bye.
Bye.